Recently, inside of my members only Facebook group, a member asked a question: Is eating organic really necessary? She was having a conversation with family members, trying to convince them to eat organic, and they just were not convinced. Today's episode is all about discussing how much eating organic can actually help you, if the benefits outweigh the cost, and what I personally recommend to make the biggest difference in your health. I hope this is a new conversation on eating organic that relieves some of the pressure while also adding some genuine education and insight as you try to live your healthy and optimal life. Hey, friend, welcome to the Better Belly Podcast. If you're currently trying endless supplements, doctor visits, and diet changes to heal your mystery symptoms, you are in the right place. We're here to solve the real root causes behind your gut, hormones, skin, sleep, and brain concerns, literally anything and everything in your body. My name is Allison Jordan. I'm a functional medicine practitioner that has supported over 150 clients just like you to heal problems that no one has been able to fix. You don't need a perfect diet or a random supplement you found on Instagram to heal. You need a proven system that heals your whole body from the inside out. That's what I'm here to share with you, episode by episode. It's time to make health easy again. And just as a reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your own health practitioner before you make any changes to your health. So guys, I am very excited to have this episode today because while it's something I don't typically talk about, I actually realized from this question that one of my clients asked me in my program, the Better Belly Blueprint, that I do have a different take on organic than I think I typically see definitely in like crunchy mom reels and stuff like that. But even some things that are touted by functional medicine practitioners. And I'm not going to say like it's all a joke and eating organic is not actually doing anything for you, but I do have a lot of caveats to it. And I really hope that it helps you think through like your priorities as you're trying to live an optimal life. And, if you are dealing with some chronic symptoms right now, like maybe you're listening and you feel pretty healthy, that's fine. But if you are dealing with some chronic health problems, I really do hope that this helps guide you as like where to put your time and energy as you're trying to heal yourself as fast as possible with something that will actually work. So I'm going to have two different major points to today's episode. You might lose track of it, honestly, because one point's going to be the majority of today, but I am going to let you know there's 2 points. And so the first one is going to be all on educating around what organic is and is eating organic enough. And I'll just start off right off the bat with this is when I talk to somebody about eating organic, maybe it's just a friend of mine who's wondering, or some random stranger on the street who learns I'm a gut health specialist and this is like their first question they ask. I always tell them that it's not about this one thing that I eat organic and therefore it makes you healthy. Or like, let's say I don't eat organic and therefore, I don't know, your health's going to go down the drain. That's actually not the equation we're dealing with. We're dealing with, when we're thinking about organic, non-organic, and the rest of your body, we're thinking about the total load of toxins. So it's not just, do you eat organic? It's what other toxins is your body dealing with? And it can really seem unfair where you have maybe family members or friends who don't eat organic. Maybe they don't even eat great food. They eat lots of processed food, high sugar food. Maybe you're gluten-free and dairy-free and they're not. And you're like, why do they seemingly have fewer or more problems than me? That can be a fairly in-depth question. But one of the common factors going on hidden beneath the surface is that your body, for a variety of reasons, has more toxins than their body does. And so when they eat non-organic food, let alone other things, maybe gluten-full food, whatever it is, that your body can't handle or that you're avoiding to be as healthy as possible and they're still healthier than you, is because you have to forget that we're thinking about total load of toxins. Now, non-organic foods, just to like little biochemistry background, non-organic foods, they have herbicides and pesticides on them. So they're chemicals that help kill bugs and other plants around them so that this plant can grow. Now, the only reason this plant doesn't die when it's given an herbicide that kills, like, say, all the weeds around it is because it's been genetically modified to not need or not respond to that herbicide. A great example of this is glyphosate. So glyphosate's like kind of the poster child of bad bad herbicides that you don't want to get yourself entangled with. And the reason that it works is because it blocks a pathway, an enzymatic pathway that plants need to live. And it's called the Shikimate pathway, based off of the man who discovered it. And so the Shikimate pathway, or sometimes known as the shikimic acid pathway, gets blocked. And then the plant literally can't do what it needs to do to continue to give itself glucose and feed itself nutrients, and it dies. But if corn that is sprayed with this glyphosate is given this herbicide and it doesn't die, it's because it's been genetically modified to not rely on the Shikimate pathway. Now you can imagine, you're like, well, that's not a big deal. Well, that's maybe you're like, that's kind of cool. But then we are not also attending to the ramifications that if we're taking away a natural pathway that plant has developed to have the full range of nutrients in it, that plant itself might not be as nutrient dense, or there's a whole host of things that go on. There's actually people who've studied this. And so if you sound like, well, Allison, tell me more. There's people who study this. Go and check out a link that I have. You can type this into YouTube or check out the link in my show notes. Dr. Zach Bush like a plant, Bush. It's called Chemical Farming and the Loss of Human Health. And he's a really interesting guy. He's a former cancer researcher from Johns Hopkins University who was switched in the middle of his career, started asking this question of why are so many, he went from like, how do I kill the cancer, to why are so many people getting cancer? Why are children getting cancer? Like, up until that point, we kind of said you got cancer if you smoked or you kind of did something that set yourself up for it. You got old or whatever. But why are more people getting cancer who seemingly have done nothing to antagonize this process? And he really breaks down a lot of the biochemistry behind it. And it's also a very visually engaging video. It's I've watched it probably 7 times. And I've showed it to people. And it doesn't always necessarily, quote unquote, convince them that it's a problem. But I think it's really great scientifically, and I always love watching it. So go check that out. It's got like 2 million views on it, too, if you want to, I don't know, somebody to vouch for it. Other people like it, too. I will say the very end of the video gets kind of weird in terms of maybe you resonate with it, maybe you don't. He starts to deviate from more of the scientific elements of his talk into more of a spiritual. And I'd say that's kind of on him. He clearly is passionate about it, but I wouldn't let it disregard all the other science that he shares before it. That is really phenomenal. So that's just one thing I would share about that. So all that being said, glyphosate and herbicides and pesticides, they are bad. And then what'll happen is if you eat a food that's coated in these things, we can actually see under microscopes that if you give a gut lining, which they have these between your cells in your gut, you have this thing called tight junctions. And the only way these tight junctions are maintained is with a certain protein. When you introduce herbicides and pesticides like glyphosate that is coated on the food that you're eating and often absorbed into it as well, when you eat that, or you eat meat that has these things, like if it's not grass-fed meat, this is where things get really crazy. You have to think about, what is the meat? What was the chicken eating that you're now eating? What is in its fat? Because fat is where most of the toxins are going to hang out. What was this cow eating? It can get really intense, right? And so that's where people are like, they either go all in and they're like, I'm grass-fed and I'm cage-free and I'm, organic all the way, non-GMO. But we'll get into why that cannot be enough. And it can often be not quite the right focus, which is my main goal for you understanding. But you also have to understand, if you are still eating these things, we just know that non-organic foods with herbicides and pesticides break down the gut lining. However, you're like, well, why do some people eat lots of organic or non-organic items, whether it's meat or plants, and they don't seem sick? Well, there's a couple things that can go on. Maybe their body is regenerating faster, not because they're a child or something, but because they have a better detox pathway. They have more robust health, right? So their body is able to replenish those cells, because those cells are replenishing themselves every minute. They die and they replenish. And the question is, can you rebuild your gut lining faster than it's getting depleted? And some people, the answer is yes. The other question is, if someone's eating non-organic but they don't seem sick, are they on their way to it, or are they not on their way and they simply don't have as many toxins as you do? Because the ultimate game is, I want you to imagine a scale. One side of the scale is toxin load. How heavy is that toxin load? And the other side of the scale is a combination of how well you detox and nutrient sufficiency. Nutrients help you rebuild what toxins can break down. Nutrients help you push toxins out and actually detox them. Nutrients keep you high vitality so your body can function normally. And this is not about eating superfoods. This is about how well do you do fat assimilation? How well does your liver produce enzymes to break down food? How well does your pancreas work? Do you poop every day? Can your colon move? Lots of things can impede every step of these processes, and there's no point where you can't rewind what's going on. But as the scale tips and there's more and more toxin load, maybe it's non-organic food plus a bunch of other toxins, which I'm going to read you a little list here, because you're like, what other toxins are you talking about, Allison? Like, what are my options? I'm going to share a list, but then you also you could have a pretty heavy toxin load, but if you're really successfully putting nutrients and helping you detox and you're removing toxins from that list that your body's dealing with, that's when your health gets better. Cool. I almost want to say it again. Like, if you're eating organic and you still feel like your health is not optimal, you might be dealing with some other toxins in your body, and you don't have to hammer away on this whole organic thing. And if you're not organic and you're like, why do I still feel so healthy? Is this all a sham? I actually thought about this. I really laughed to myself that I've never heard anyone say, man, I went organic and my health just skyrocketed, right? And I think that's one of the reasons people don't feel as motivated to go organic, because we don't see those immediate results. Well, one of the reasons we might not see the immediate results is that they still have other toxins in their body they still haven't dealt with. Another reason is that we're more likely staring at a long game. So we're not like, I stopped this and the next day I felt better. It's, I stopped this and 10 years later I didn't develop cancer. And I'm not saying if you eat non-organic, you'll develop cancer, but that's kind of it's whether it's cancer or an autoimmune disease or just a generic disease like IBS, these are what we're looking at people developing due to a long-term exposure to toxins, not like, and then tomorrow I felt better. So you also have to change your expectations and the parameters under which you're thinking about your results. Okay, so here's just a list of toxins. And the first one I always like to mention is smoke from a fire, right? I'm not saying don't go and have a fire pit in it, like in the middle of summer, enjoy yourself. But humans have been being exposed to toxins since forever. Since, I don't care, if I don't know, I'm a Christian, so in my world we talk about evolution or like old Earth versus young Earth. It doesn't really matter. At some point, humans have been hanging around fires and we're breathing them in, and they're toxins. And at other points in history, we've relied a lot on fires to cook our food and heat our homes and stay alive. That's a toxin, but inherently the human body is designed, it's literally designed as if it knew it's going to get exposed to toxins and it needs a way to get them out. Your body is completely designed to handle toxins. Again, the problem is when there's more toxins than the body can handle, and there can be some genetic variety in how well someone can detox. But then even if you take a super detoxer and you load them up with enough toxins, they're gonna break. Hey friend, do you feel like you're never properly digesting anything no matter how you change your diet? Have you spent thousands of dollars buying supplements, labs, and fancy functional or holistic practitioners to simply have no relief from your symptoms? Or do you just want to poop daily, ditch acid reflux, and balance your hormones without being dependent on medications? If so, I've got great news for you. You can stop the money hemorrhage that's happening around your health and finally get worry-free health through the Gut Healer System. The Gut Healer System is my 2.0 upgrade to the former Better Belly method that consistently reduces our clients' symptoms by 80% in 3 to 6 months so that your health can finally feel easy. Our clients have gone from being stuck at home with fibromyalgia to watching their grandchildren's soccer games every evening, or they've been able to travel for work and pleasure without wondering the entire trip if they're going to become constipated and ruin their whole time. We've also seen clients get off of 40 plus years of medications that they've been on for acid reflux, constipation, and PMS, and stay off that medication without needing to be on lifelong extreme diet restrictions or supplements. I want you to be able to enjoy the holidays and family meals without fearing how you're going to feel afterwards or feeling guilty for what you do eat. If you are ready for this, head to betterbellytherapies.com/training to watch my free micro training to learn exactly how 600 plus of my clients have healed their gut even when nothing else has worked before. In this training, you're going to learn what your doctors are missing, even if they're functional or holistic, why no amount of food restrictions are going to heal your gut, the 5 toxin trap that is keeping you sick, how to heal your gut in the most affordable way possible, and the 3 steps to actually heal your gut. I can't wait to see you living a worry-free, optimal, healthy life. Head to betterbellytherapies.com/training to get started today. Now, back to the show. All right, so smoke from a fire outside is a toxin. Drugs, this could be prescription like birth control. I know doctors aren't going to acknowledge it, but birth control is not, it's a toxin. Your liver has to deal with it. Now, it may be serving a role, but it is adding to one more thing. Your body is like, well, gee, we have one more thing to deal with. It's artificial hormones. Over-the-counter stuff like ibuprofen, your liver has to deal with as if it's a toxin. Yes. Does it give you positive side effects? Yeah. It can reduce pain. It can reduce inflammation. But is it a toxin at the end of the day, something your body has to get rid of and siphon out of you? Yes. And then we also are thinking in terms of drugs, illegal or recreational drugs like marijuana, cocaine, things that we've kind of demonized frequently in our cultural psyche. It's just on a continuum of toxin, right? It's accepted versus unaccepted, positive side effects versus negative side effects. And guess what? Birth control has negative side effects. And the reason people do illegal drugs is because there's some side effect that feels positive to them, right? So just to say, like, drugs and toxins can have positive and negative side effects. Other types of toxins, we're thinking about parabens and phthalates. These are going to be commonly found in anything that is scented with chemicals. So Bed Bath and Body Works, if you get a headache when you walk past it, you're likely very sensitive to paraben and phthalates. And that can be genetically different or vary based on how well your liver detoxes or your overall toxin load. Perfumes that have chemicals in them, which is the majority of perfumes, if it's not chemical, it needs to be essential oil. Really. Candles, same with that. Candles can be made with essential oils, but a majority of them are going to be made with chemicals because it's cheaper. Detergents, lotions, all of these mostly have chemical scents in them. You don't have to go unscented. You just have to get a scent that is typically essential oil. And then some people, I've dealt with some really sensitive clients who even react poorly to essential oils because if you can smell it, the chemical is in the air. I want to be very clear. If you can smell it, it's a real thing. It's not fake or like, I don't know, imaginary and it's not affecting you, right? The only reason you can smell something, whether it's an essential oil made by Mother Earth or a chemical made by man, then it exists. If you smell brownies, it's because there's something baking in the oven. All right. VOCs, which you're going to find in furniture, pathogens. So pathogens are something we don't talk about a lot when we're like, eat organic. And we're like, well, I don't care how much you're eating organic. If you have a parasite in you, you're just going to have a continual load of toxins being pooped out by these little parasites. H. pylori, candida, Lyme disease, COVID is a type of toxin. Well, it will release toxins, which is why people are getting long haul COVID after they get it. C. diff, mold toxicity. These are things I see in my practice frequently. And especially when they're hidden toxins, like hidden being, we tend to see pathogens that are short term. So like I got the stomach flu. I had a virus. I, had the flu. We see those toxins. They're more hidden when they're not so like slam bam. I had it once. They're just chronic and they're in the background and they're what's giving you your daily bloating, your daily headaches, your daily, your monthly horrible PMS, your daily anxiety. And the range of symptoms they can give you are so so wide and so gnarly, they can float under the radar for decades and really, really mess you up. And you can imagine having that pathogen plus eating non-organic just speeds up the process to have the extra toxin of non-organic herbicides and pesticides. Heavy metals like mercury, uranium, arsenic. If you're listening to this, you're like, there's no way that's me. That is what all my clients say. And I'd say about a third of the people we work with have a significant load of at least one heavy metal, sometimes more. So heavy metals can be another component. And again, it's those tend to float under the radar. That's why I do the testing I do in my program, the Better Belly Blueprint, to find these things. You have to find the hidden toxins that are running the show in the background. Vaccines are another thing I'm just going to throw out there that I read a book recently because I have a daughter now. I have to make decisions about her vaccines. The decisions were made for me. I'm neither here nor there. They were made and it happened. And there's, again, positive side effects of vaccines, like not dying from the thing the vaccine was made for. And then there's the negative side effects, which is being exposed to all the other toxins that the vaccine has to be made with to actually carry the immunizing component of it. So I read a book called The Vaccine Friendly Plan by Dr. Paul Thomas, and I am going to include a link in the show notes where you can just go check this out on Amazon. You can read more about it. You can get it on Audible or get a Kindle, whatever you want. I read this book and it was super helpful. It was broken down really well. And one of the most beautiful things about this book is that he actually talked about vaccines are only one of the type of toxins we have to really be thinking about. There's multiple types of toxins. We can't just be so hyper focused on vaccines and we lose our minds on vaccines. You gave your child a vaccine, you didn't. You're like, but what about all the other things that are happening to our children? It's not just about one toxin, just to reiterate the point. But anyways, he talked about the fact that the total load of mercury in each vaccine or aluminum, because mercury and aluminum are the two common heavy metals that is going to be a problem when you're taking vaccines. The total load in an individual vaccine is, of course, below FDA, CDC, approval level. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be on the market. However, when you look at all of the vaccines that children are expected to take now, especially at a very young age when their detox pathways are just they don't really exist. So these children are not getting rid of these metals or storing them up safely in any way, shape, or form. Between 0 to 2 is when the majority of kids are getting a huge chunk of vaccines, right? The amount of total mercury and aluminum, though, is multiple times higher than what it should be. And he said that no one's it's simple math. It's not rocket science. No one's doing the math and saying, everyone says, well, this individual vaccine's a good idea, and this individual vaccine's a good idea, and this individual vaccine's a good idea, but what about them all together? And that's his main point in the book, and it's my main point. I'm not telling you, I'm not honestly here to have a vaccine fight, but it's just one of the toxins we want to think about. Other types of toxins we have to think about is, psychological toxins. So, toxic people who cause you anxiety, have poor boundaries, who cause all sorts of weirdness. It could be your boss, it could be your mom, it could be a sibling, it could be your neighbor. Toxic people cause a chemical reaction in your body out through your adrenal glands, your neurotransmitter in your brain. It rewires your brain. It puts you into a chronic fight and flight, and that's a type of toxin. Yes, is there a positive outcome? Are our bodies designed to have a fight and flight response for a very healthy reason? 100%. Can we abuse or have that fight and flight response abused in our bodies, even against our will? It simply keeps happening, and that's a type of toxin now that it's too much of that response? Yes. So those are examples of all the types of toxin load that we are dealing with. And every person, let's say you take 10 people who are all eating non-organic food. Well, one person, maybe the non-organic food's one of the biggest toxins they're dealing with. And it's just not affecting them that much because they're managing it really well. But the person next to them, if you line them up, they're dealing with, a toxic load, but also a toxic personality in their life. Or they're rather toxic load, the non-organic food and the toxic personality. The next person after that is dealing with non-organic food and a toxic personality and copper toxicity, and they're dealing with parabens and phthalates, a heavy amount of that. Maybe they're honestly, most American households just have a gorge of paraben and phthalates, and they have Lyme disease that they don't know about, and they have a parasite because having Lyme disease sets you up for having other smaller pathogens, and they've been exposed to mold toxicity in their life. Well, this person, like, is really toxic load heavy. They need a lot of help. They're going to have a lot more symptoms than the first two people, but also going non-organic for them or going organic might not tip the scales for them. Do you see the math? All right, I think I've really hit that point home. Let me share with you the 5 toxins in my program that I actually personally focus on the most, that I'm seeing the best results from. And I think the reason for that is because they're the toxins that are not being talked about. They're not being addressed, or they're being talked about and addressed, but in a really bad way, like just not effective. And that's been sad to see in my industry. So many people saying, I already worked with a functional medicine provider. I already worked with a naturopathic doctor. And the number of small ways that somebody has, I look at the protocol they did, and it's just every single person has a different protocol from a different person that just like, this one didn't match up in this way, and this one didn't line up in this way, and it's different. So it's really hard to break down exactly what you've gone through that didn't work, because there can be a lot of variety. There's going to be patterns, common things that people are messing up. Whether it's a blog they read or what their doctor recommended to them. But just to say that before I share these things, don't be like, well, I already worked on that. Unfortunately, you've probably worked on some of it, but maybe you've only worked on 50% of the picture and not 100% of the picture. And just for the sake of time, I'm not going to dive deeper into this with these, but I do in my program, the Better Belly Blueprint. So number 1 is going to be weak digestion. So when you have low stomach acid, low bile production, and or low pancreatic enzymes, you're not going to break down food. You're not going to get nutrients out of it. Your microbiome is going to become unbalanced, and you will have inflammation in the gut lining simply from not having digested enough food in there. Number 2 is going to be a closed detox pathway. So if your liver is congested, which is the number 1 place that all of the toxins are going to get, just the traffic jam is going to start in the liver. When that detox pathway is narrowed, then the toxins just get backed up and you get a lot of symptoms. So that scale the toxins aren't getting offloaded, and you're going to get skin problems, sleep problems, mood problems, digestion problems, bloating, constipation, acid reflux, all sorts of not fun things. Number 3 is going to be heavy metals and mineral imbalances. I've talked a little bit about that. So I'll just move on from there. And then number 5 is food sensitivities. So that's going to be a lot of times people come in and they've maybe tried a little bit of diet change. Maybe it's been a lot. We've had some people do some crazy amount of diet restrictions. Everything from I only eat 10 foods and I still don't feel good. But a lot of times there are people even if they've dabbled in going gluten-free and dairy-free and things like that, there's other foods they're still sensitive to that they're just not aware of. And so it's just adding to the problem. But the great news is that you can actually reduce a lot of food sensitivities. A lot of food sensitivities are learned by the immune system when there's leaky gut, and you can unlearn it when you get rid of inflammation, give the body time to heal the leaky gut, and then you can reintroduce it because the body will unlearn that sensitivity. So that's the good news about food sensitivities. But maybe to wrap up this section, I would say I would personally focus on mold toxicity, if someone has that, before focusing on eating non-organic food. Eating non-organic food while being in a mold toxic environment will speed up the process. But if eating organic is all you can control, it doesn't hurt to transition to organic. I just don't expect that you're going to have a sudden health change. And so, yeah, I think eating organic, that's what I strive for. Like there's plenty of times I'm at a grocery store and they just don't have an organic option of something. I'm not going to go travel to another grocery store 15 minutes away to get that one item. I'm just going to say, that's fine. The majority of other items in my cart are organic, and that's what's happening. Or if I'm traveling and I just can't get an organic version of some meal or grass-fed meat or something, I'm just be like, the majority of the rest of the time I'm eating that. And I already know I've worked on the other toxins in my body. I believe my body is resilient, and so is yours. All of our bodies are. They're beautiful, amazing organisms. And our goal is to remove the blockages that are keeping them from healing, and then they just go and do their job. So one story that came to mind that I thought people might find really interesting in terms of organic, non-organic foods is a book by Dr. Jill Carnahan. It's called Unexpected. I have a link in my show notes. It's an autobiography of this MD who went through breast cancer starting in residency. And then she developed Crohn's disease a couple of years after finishing beating breast cancer. And then she got mold exposure like a couple decades later, and went through a huge mold toxicity problem. And she grew up on a farm, and on her farm, they sprayed herbicides and pesticides every year. And she's like in the thick of it, like she's like breathing it in straight from the source. And she does talk about that early on in her book. She thinks that contributes to a lot of her problems in her health. Now, the rest of her family on that farm did not have all her health problems. So clearly there was a kind of a genetic component to that. But the point being, when you add enough of the wrong players at once, you're going to have a really bad situation. And she has an amazing health and very stable health at this point in time, but she did not get her help through the conventional health system, and she's now a functional medicine practitioner. So yeah, that's my big thing on the science and all my thoughts on organic. My second thing, which is a much smaller point, I already told you guys it was going to be small, is just the emotions that can be wrapped up in trying to feel that we need to convince or control other people about the decisions they're making, whether it's vaccines or no vaccines, organic or non-organic. And I just find I like totally get the heart where you're like, you want the people around you to be healthy. You don't want them to get sick like you did. You want their children to be healthy. And you feel that you're just trying to educate them. And I think that's fine. But I saw this beautiful post and I actually tried to find it and I couldn't. So I clearly didn't save it. But it was just a reel, and it talked about how we can't control our parents. It was just specifically focusing on parents, and that our parents are their own human beings with their own histories, and not all people want to get better, and not all people feel like getting better, healing can take you out of the realm of familiar and into the realm of unfamiliar. And unfamiliar is often, it's scary for people. A lot of reasons people don't want to join my program, the Better Belly Blueprint, is it's just different. They're like, well, I want they're not used to that process, or they've tried something that seems really similar, and how is it different? It's just not knowing what that process is going to be like, or feeling like something's too painful to make the change. And so I really wouldn't, I'd encourage that. I encourage that client and anybody listening that as you listen to this, I love it. If you're like passionate and you're like, wow, this podcast episode is amazing, or Dr. Zach Bush's YouTube video is amazing. I think it is. It just it might fall flat. I showed it to my family, and I have several family members who just are like, that was nice. Or some of them who's in like, well, some of their science was wrong. That's the family I live in, y'all. It's pretty great. But, all that being said, we just need to let that go and know that there's beautiful, amazing information out there on the biology and our bodies, and you can embrace that and run with it, and you can change your children, and like that's who you have control of, is you and your family. Maybe not everyone at all points in time, and eventually they'll be adults and you really won't have control of them. But as you're growing a family, you can make some of those choices and have control, and you can be a light for, if their health does decline, or if they're like, hey, you I know you were sick and you've gotten better, what did you do? You can be a light, but you might have to wait around for them to come around, and they might not want to. So that was the last thing. I think that's a type of toxin to try and convince others. It's not a fun energy to hang out with. Is I need to convince somebody. I love the compassion and love that we can have when we really want to convince people. So why I have a podcast is I'm trying to spread the good news of gut health and really break down all the myths and just garbage that is out there on the internet on how to actually heal the gut that is really slowing people down and or wasting their time and money. But not everybody, people can be suspicious of this just as much as they can of like, are vaccines really that bad for you and all that. So we all find our own path. And I hope this episode just illuminated a little bit more of your path, wherever you want to find yourself on that path. In terms of organic food, let alone a lot of the other toxins that we talked about. So hope you guys have a good rest of your week, and I will catch you guys next week. Hey friend, I hope you loved this episode. If you've been a fan for a while or newly loving this podcast, can you do me a favor? Drop into Apple Podcasts and leave me a review. When you leave a review, you do so much. You help me know you're listening, you can tell me what you're loving so I know what to make more of, and you help others by boosting this podcast so other people like you can find the podcast too. I mean, it's a win-win-win, right? So if you want a way to pay it forward, just go to Apple Podcasts or click the link in my show notes and leave a rating and review. And if you want some more free stuff, just head over to my free Facebook group, betterbellytherapies.com/Facebook, and you can get access to all of my free support for you, including some Facebook group exclusive stuff like my podcast episode vault, where you can search the Better Belly podcast by topic and find exactly what you need to expedite your healing. I cannot wait to see you in there. Catch you guys next week.